What's going on, everybody? This is Corey Lee's Boxing, and we are back with another banger. So please smash that like button, you guys, and subscribe. And yeah, man, we're gonna talk this boxing today, man. I want to go over the fights that happened this past weekend. It was a lot of fights that happened this weekend. Shakur Stevenson versus Zapata. Um, we all know that how that fight ended. I mean, it's a bunch of fights, man. I hope everybody's been doing good out there. But yeah, man, we're gonna get into it, man. We're gonna definitely get into it. A bunch of fights to break down. Um, it was a hell of a weekend. It was a hell of a weekend of fights. But this weekend coming up with fights, man, with music and all of these Dubois and all of these. It's like a quadruple header going down this weekend, man. I can't wait. Boxing is in a good space right now, and yeah, man, I want to see how all of this unfolds, man, because it's a lot. It's a lot of fights, man. A lot of fights to break down. Um, but Berlanga, man, going into this fight, you guys, to break down this, Hamas Sheeraz fight, to break that down, it was a listen, man. They had a lot of talking going on to this fight, leading up into this fight. It was a lot of back and forth going down. And I thought that both guys came in there to win for sure. And Berlanga was trading. Berlanga was trading back and forth. He was letting that leather fly. But in round one you can tell that Shiraz's whole game plan was to try to pick him apart from the outside, and he did good doing that. He did good doing that. He was able to pick him apart from the outside, and that opened up a lot of openings for him on the inside as well. So, I just think right now, with Berlanga, you know, having this type of fight, man, and having a back and forth battle like he did, man, he got iced. From round one, it was apparent that you know Shiraz was gonna make his implement his game plan, you know, and it he did. I'm not sure if Berlanga's coaches were telling him the exact. I think Berlanga had the wrong game plan, straight up. Straight up and down. I think Berlanga came in there with the wrong game plan, and I think it cost him. It cost him. I think that it cost him because he could have did a lot better than that. We've seen him in fights with Canelo where he lasted a pretty good amount of time. He lasted the whole fight and did well. But at the end of the day, man, we got to be able to hold these fighters accountable. We got to hold these fighters accountable, man. And it just wasn't enough. Berlanga, he wasn't trying to, he wasn't fighting good in the inside. He was getting caught on a whole lot of inside shots. They were breaking him down on the inside. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, man. I thought that Shiraz, opened up a lot of he pretty much opened up a can of worms on Berlanga. He can get hurt. We thought that he had a really good chin going into this fight. We thought Berlanga had an iron chin, and this fight showed us that, he doesn't have an iron chin and he can get cracked and he can get hurt. And that's from a guy moving up in weight, man. You guys got to think, man. This guy, was coming up in weight. He wasn't just, Shiraz. Hamza Shiraz was coming up in weight. He was coming up, from 160 to 168. You know, and we see now that he fits good at 168. We see now that that could possibly be a good fit for him. Um, and you know, now that they're already talking about, you know, possible Sheeraz versus, you know, Canelo Alvarez in 2026. I think that's a push. But I want to see what Canelo does in this Terrence Crawford fight before we talk about any future fights. You know, Terrence Crawford could put on a dominant performance that we might not even want to see, you know, Canelo Alvarez, you know, dare I say again, you know. I'm not saying that, you know, he's going to retire Canelo, but if Terrence Crawford looks that good, I mean, who's to say he doesn't? You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, you know, Canelo Alvarez, you know, has a couple more years left, but you got to think, man, he's been fighting since he was about 12, 13, 14, you know, professionally. You know what I'm saying? So that's a big, tall task for a guy like that, you know. And I want to see him fight, you know, the best. You know, Sheeraz won his fight fair and square. He landed very good combinations. Um, and Berlanga's team, you know, looked dumbfounded. They look lost. They look like, you know, I can't believe this happened. You know, you got to think that, you know, Sheeraz was the real deal going into this fight. You know, he lost a club. I mean, you know, he didn't lose, but he got a draw, you know, with the champion at 160. And, you know, maybe some say that he was weight drained for that fight. Some say that, you know, he could have, you know, performed better at a higher weight class. Some say that, you know, they want to see that fight at 168 instead of 160. You know, so I'm going to be honest right now, man. Moving forward, Berlanga needs to take some time off for sure. He needs to take some time off. You know, the punishment he took for 4 or 5 rounds was enough for me to see that he needs, you know, a whole new game plan going into some of these fights. You know, he shouldn't have been taking that much punishment at this top level. You're saying that you're at that top level. You're talking all types of shit, saying that you're better than this guy in so many different facets of the game in boxing. And you know, you pretty much, you know, put on a shit show. You know, you know, I'm not, I've never been on the Berlanga train. Just for the simple fact, I like to see, you know, fighters in there, you know, use their boxing ability too. When you're knocking out guys that you're supposed to knock out, that's not really showing me nothing. You know, that's not really showing me nothing. You know, and now that I think about it, Canelo could have probably got him out of there if he would have pushed the issue. You know, if he would have, you know, pushed it a little bit harder, you know, when it comes to, you know, some of the punches he was throwing and landing and stuff like that, man. But what a fight, man. What a fight. So, you know, I know we're talking about the Berlanga, you know, versus Sheeraz fight. Um, and now I want to turn forward, focus into the Shakur Stevenson fight versus Zepeda fight. Well, going into this fight, a lot of people didn't think that Shakur Stevenson was gonna you know, stand in the pocket and trade with, you know, Zepeda. You know, they were thinking that Shakur Stevenson was not gonna do that. They were thinking that Shakur Stevenson was just gonna come in there and you know, try to collect a payday. But I'm gonna be honest, and I'll be the first to admit that not only did he not try, he tried to stand in the pocket and you know, he tried to bang. You know, he tried to bang. He was banging. He was standing in the pocket and he was banging, you know, with, you know, a guy that was, you know, known for some of his, you know, power shots in Zepeda. You know, round one, you know, it showed that, you know, Shakur Stevenson was there to stand in the pocket and throw blows. You know, there was no, to me, there was nothing that he showed me that he couldn't do in a boxing ring against a guy that was coming forward in Zepeda. You know, he was able to slip shots. He was able to counter. He was even able to take a couple good shots from Zepeda, you know, at 135 pounds. So, you know, that showed me that Shakur Stevenson is good at that division. You know, I know he was moving up not too long ago from 130 pounds, and he moved up from 126 a while back. So he's moved up a couple times. So he's there to stay from what they're saying at 135 pounds. He did win the Zepeda fight, I believe, fair and square. I didn't have it as wide as some of the judges had it. One of the judges had it 118, 110. I don't believe that. I don't believe it was that close of a fight. I feel like Zepeda was throwing a lot of punches. You know, all of those punches weren't landing, you know, the cleanest, but, you know, he was punching on his chest. He was punching on his arms. Even his trainer, Zepeda's trainer, was telling him to punch on the arms, punch on the chest, you know, punch anywhere you can get, anywhere you can, see openings. You know, it might not be a clear shot to the face or a clear shot to the body because, Shakur Stevenson, has really, really good defense. We all know that. We all know Shakur Stevenson has really, really good defense and stuff like that. So we all know that, So we all know that, and it's like one of those things that, hey, if you know he has really good defense and you know he's really good like that, he's a really good fighter that he can avoid, some of those power punches. You got to be, on guard for that. But, moving forward for Shakur Stevenson, Tank Davis is going through his legal battles. I'll take Tank Davis for a while now. I would love to see, Shakur Stevenson versus Tank Davis. That'll be a good fight, I think, especially after seeing Shakur Stevenson in the pocket and is able to bang and doesn't mind banging. I would love to see him bring that approach if he were to bring that approach with Gervonta Tank Davis. Could he withhold some of his power shots like he did Zepeda? But Shakur Stevenson, nevertheless, did look good in this fight. Put on a pretty good performance. And he moves on. He's still undefeated. He takes Zepeda's O from him. Now Zepeda has a loss. And, Shakur Stevenson is the WBC lightweight champion of the world. And, he showed me in that fight that, a lot of people were saying that Shakur Stevenson was born leading up into that fight. A lot of people were saying that, Shakur Stevenson, didn't have that, that it factor, to get it done, in top tier fights. I want to see Shakur Stevenson in nothing but good fights after this. Nothing but top tier fights. We've seen him in this fight. I want to see him in top tier fights after that. You know what I'm saying? We've seen him in this fight right here off the top. I want to see him in nothing but top tier fights after that. You know what I'm saying? So I think the more that I watch Shakur Stevenson, I can tell that he's trying to master the game of boxing. And the whole point of boxing is to hit and not get hit. And Shakur Stevenson is doing a damn good job doing that, right now from what I can see. Obviously I would, favor, Gervonta just a tad in that fight because he has that X factor. And that X factor can come at any time. Ask Leo Santa Cruz, ask, some of the other fighters that he's fought. Ask, Rolly Romero that just beat Ryan Garcia. Ask Ryan Garcia. I want to see Shakur in there with more really good fighters. But a lot of those fighters from 135 pounds have moved up to a 140. Ryan Garcia's not at 135 anymore. Rolly Romero's not at 135 anymore. You still got fighters like Pitbull Cruz, Rayo that beat, Chris Colbert. And, you got other fighters out there too. So I want to see what he can do. I want to see, the best fight, the best. And one more fight that I want to break down as well. The Morrell fight. You know, the Morrell fight. Yeah, that was a good fight. I feel like Morrell did well in that fight. But it was one of those things. He got hurt. He got hurt in that fight. With a lot of people thought that, he should have been able to win that fight clearly. And it wasn't just a clear cut win. Some people even thought that David Morrell should have lost that fight. David Morrell's 27. I think he can bounce back. But I did think he took, somewhat of a beating against, David Benavidez. Maybe some of that is lingering in this fight. You guys got to think these guys are human. Taking a punishment at 175 pounds, or 100. I think they fought at 175 or 168 pounds. But anything higher than 147, 154, where they change the gloves and stuff like that, man, it could go down. It could go down at any time, man. And I feel like David Morrell took a lot of flush shots against David Benavidez, and but he was able to hold off, the undefeated power puncher, and Aman Katev, and he was able to hurt him as well too. David Morrell was able to hurt him as well too. So, it was a back and forth battle. Both guys went back and forth. But listen, man, David Morrell is showing that he's definitely not any pushover. Even though we've never heard of this guy, Aman Kitchov. I've never heard of him going into this fight. Even though we haven't heard of him, doesn't mean he's not the goods. Doesn't mean he's not, not even say the goods. Doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. I didn't say great fighter, but doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. I would love to see, Kachev in there with, some more named fighters, notable fighters at 168 or 175 pounds. I would love to see that, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this live stream up, man. I gotta eat my food. I threw on the throwback Corey Lee boxing shirt, the original. As you guys know, I got other shirts as well out there. But yeah, man, please, whatever you guys do, smash that like button, and subscribe. And I appreciate all of you guys watching the channel. I'm gonna try to at least do breakdowns, every week, especially leading up into this fight with the Usyk fight. So you guys stay tuned for the Usyk breakdown, because I will be doing that this week. You guys know that it is my favorite fighter. There is no secret. You guys know who. Well, I'm not even gonna spoil it. I might. Listen. Some people think Daniel Dubois is gonna win. Some people think Alexander Usyk is gonna win. Only time will tell, and Saturday can't come fast enough. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Please smash that like button and subscribe. And until next time, you guys. Peace. Subscribe. Corey Lee Boxing, man. Doing it for years now, man. Peace.